So your partner has given up on the relationship and you are left there to save and fight for your relationship by yourself. And if you look at a lot of my client stories, this is the exact same story they have. So in this video, I'll show you exactly how they do it and how you can save your relationship with a high degree of success, just like my clients have. And in case you're new to this channel, my name is Geoffrey and I help men who are on the brink of a divorce, a separation, or in a one-sided relationship like you are now to equip them with the right skills and knowledge to be able to design a thriving relationship despite that. So if you want more content on this topic, be sure to subscribe to this channel and also click the bell button as well to be notified when I post new videos every single week. So before we can even begin to understand how to reconstruct a one-sided relationship, we need to understand how to deconstruct it in the first place. And we need to understand here how and why a one-sided relationship forms in the first place. And this typically happens in 6 stages. So stage 1 is really when the cracks start to form. So we need to understand, guys, is that entropy is just a basic and natural part of life. As you go through more time in your relationship, as you go through different life stages, you're gonna have problems that come into the relationship. So for example, in my relationship, not only are you getting kind of the day-to-day logistical issues of things that happen every day, but also as you go through different life stages, for me, we started to have a lot more issues with difficult people in our lives, with difficult friends, with wedding planning and building a house and having kids, etc. And these issues can seem very small at first. So it could be that conflicts over who does what chores every single day. It can start out as something very small. But the point here is that as you go on in your relationship, cracks are going to begin to form because of all the natural problems that just come in to a relationship in general. And now this brings us to stage 2, which is that sometimes when these problems happen, we may not always respond to it in the most optimal way possible. So maybe when you're having an argument over that AC remote in the middle of the night, you guys may be tired, sleepy, and what comes out may not be the friendliest, the best thing that you can say. And when you're not careful, these small moments when you may not respond in the most optimal way can begin to crack that foundations of safety that is so crucial in a relationship. And so when you have these cracks in safety, what happens is that creates more of a hesitation from both sides to want to share more things in the future. So for example, in this case where you're starting off with arguing over the AC remote, your partner might think in the future, whenever my partner is tired, whenever my partner is sleepy, don't discuss anything difficult at that point in time. And so for future nights, your partner might not be as inclined to share with you more about her day, her feelings. And so what happens is this small event creates more issues where less and less things get expressed. And when less and less things get expressed, that's how misunderstandings, that's how you guys grow disconnected over time. And you can see here how just one event of an AC remote can create that. Imagine what happens when this gets compounded over multiple days, multiple weeks, multiple months, multiple years, or decades sometimes even. You can see how this can slowly lead to the degradation of safety. And as safety degrades, more misunderstandings and more disconnectedness forms as well. And when stage 3 happens for long enough, that eventually compounds into where resentment grows from both of your sides. And to give you an example here, there was a time when during nights, my partner would not bring up anything to me anymore because I was always very groggy and I was always really in a bad mood whenever it was nighttime and I was sleepy. And so there was all these things that were going on in her life, but she never told me about it. And one day she told me in a weekend, "Hey Jeff, I'm going to start prioritizing work more in a short phase of my life here." And instantly, because I failed to understand where she was coming from and who she was at that moment, what she's evolved to, I got a bit offended and I got a bit frustrated by that because here I was thinking and interpreting that action of her focusing on work as she is now deprioritizing me, caring less about me, and she's prioritizing work, which is not what a good partner should do. The funny thing is that because there was already this lack of safety in our relationship, my initial instinct was not to open up a discussion with her about it. And in fact, she was very resistant to even talking to me about that discussion. And so what happens is that I created this environment where I was not able to express, so I ran with my assumptions that she was doing this because she was deprioritizing me, etc. And so I became more and more frustrated. I became more and more resentful of what she was doing at that point in time. But was it true that she was prioritizing work more because she was trying to deprioritize me? Not really. Later on, after many months, I later found out that the reason why she was prioritizing work was because she was actually trying to get everything at work in order so that she could focus more on the relationship, on us getting married, on us having kids later on. So again here, I looked at her action and I made some major misinterpretations about it. And I made those major misinterpretations because there wasn't that safety to even talk about this issue in the first place. And because there wasn't any safety to talk about the issue, I ran with that misunderstanding. And for your case in your life, you might have very different kinds of misunderstandings than the ones I had. But if you really look back in your relationship, you'll see that when the lack of safety is created, what happens is it creates more misunderstandings, and it creates more instances when you run with those misunderstandings. And so the resentment forms, but the resentment often is not based on something real. It's not based on some truth, but based on major misunderstandings by the both of you. And as the resentment grows inside me, that leads to stage 5, which is when these resentments begin to manifest in the way I do things, in the way I say things. So because I was building up all these resentments in my head, I started to get a lot more sarcastic. I might start to get a bit more passive aggressive, sometimes even downright hostile if I look back at what I did. And often when I did these things, I wouldn't even know or become aware of it. I do it very subconsciously. It's almost like a Freudian slip. And this brings us to the last stage of the resentment building process, which is that feeling of mutual one-sidedness. Because here I was creating my own resentments that was often based on things that were not really that true. And that manifested in my actions that then affects my partner in a negative way, which then builds up her resentments that causes her to do the same passive-aggressive, sarcastic, sometimes even hostile things to me again. That builds up my resentments, and you can see how this vicious cycle of mutual one-sidedness, mutual resentments starts to begin. And the reason why we know the 6 stages are the reason why relationships eventually feel one-sided and the resentment grows to the point where they're a bit uncontrollable is that if you ask someone who feels like they're in a one-sided relationship, their partner will also always feel like it's one-sided too. Now, if you look at it mathematically, if the relationship is truly one-sided, can both people feel like it's one-sided? Mathematically, that's impossible. So the funny thing is, like, when one person feels one-sided, usually the other partner feels one-sided too. It's a mutual one-sidedness. And the exact details of how the 6 stages progress may be very different from my case. But if you look very closely at the many months, the many years, or even many decades of your relationship, you'll see that the reason why you feel very resentful and your partner also seems to feel very resentful, which is why she doesn't want to try to save the relationship in the first place, is exactly the same 6 stages. And so when we look at the root causes of what causes one-sided relationships or this resentment to form, is 2 things. Well, number 1 is that the destruction of safety. Number 2 is really the false assumptions that we run with that creates the resentment within ourselves that starts this whole cycle in the first place. So now that we understand that, we need to keep 2 things in mind if we want to rebuild our relationship despite it being one-sided right now. Number 1, you need to remember that you cannot solve your problems with the same thinking, with the same paradigms that led you to the problems in the first place. And the reason why a lot of people feel stuck when they're in a one-sided relationship is that currently they hold a lot of very unoptimal paradigms and some beliefs about the world, about relationships, about their partner that actually caused them to destroy the safety in the first place, that actually caused them to hold that resentment in the first place. And these faulty paradigms currently are poisoning the way you interpret your world. And if you interpret the world in a very negative, in a very toxic way like that, you will naturally feel very bad, negative, resentful things, which makes you do bad, negative, resentful things as well. And again, this is how the cycle starts. But the problem is that they're trying to use the same way of thinking that destroyed the safety, that led them to the false resentments in the first place, to try to fix their problem right now. So for example, in talking to a lot of people and people who apply for a program, they'll always ask the question, for example, Jeff, how do you expect me to do all these good things, all these right things, to try to save my relationship when I feel all this deep resentment, when I feel that it's already one-sided? Why am I always the one who has to do the work? And if you're thinking that right now, for example, I want you to ask yourself, what thinking are you using right now? Isn't that this exact same paradigms and manner of thinking that actually got you to the problems in the first place? And the answer should be obvious, is that, again, whatever you feel right now is based on the same interpretations, the same paradigms that actually got you to the problem in the first place. Do you guys see the irony here? The second thing to remember, guys, is no one really has relationship problems, but everyone has problems with the self that reflects in their relationship. So the problem, if you look at this paradigm, interpretation, feelings, action, and result cycle again, a lot of people in one-sided relationships are trying to change their actions directly, but they haven't really changed the paradigms and the interpretations that they hold. But if you try to change your actions without changing the stuff upstream, whatever actions you change will feel very forced. It will feel very difficult. And it's also going to be ineffective as well. And when you find that your changes in your actions become ineffective, that actually creates more resentment, more exhaustion from your side, that actually worsens the cycle even more. So again, if your approach to thriving through your one-sided relationship is to just change your actions and not your internal self, you're going to be in for a very rude awakening. So with that said, what really works for my clients is not to touch these actions first. It's to actually go back and visit the stuff that is more internal, changing their core paradigms, their core beliefs about their relationship, about their life, about their partner. So in this case, changing the core beliefs about what it means to be in a one-sided relationship, what it means to actually get out of a one-sided relationship and have your partner who actually want to contribute back to the relationship, and changing your whole viewpoint around that. And when you can change your paradigm around that, that will naturally make the way you interpret this whole one-sidedness in a very different way, in a much more positive way, which then allows you to take actions in a much more positive way. And those right actions become a lot more effortless, a lot more natural to you. And that leads them to eventually go into a much better outcome as well. So what are these key paradigm shifts that we need to make? The first one is to really stop adopting what we call the follower mindset and start adopting the leader mindset. And you will hear my clients talking about this a lot in their interviews, is that all their change always starts with this one key mindset shift. You see, most couples, when you hear them talk, they're really following what we call the victim mindset or the follower mindset. So if I see people in a one-sided relationship, they'll often say these things. If she's not starting, why should I start? If she's not doing the work, why should I do the work? Why am I the only one who always needs to do everything in this relationship? But if you look at any leaders in any discourse of life, whether that's business, athletics, performance, you will never hear a true leader say any of the things that we mentioned before. Like, imagine if your CEO, for example, for the company you're working for says, why am I the one who always has to do everything? Why should I be the one to start doing the positive thing if she's not starting to do the positive thing? You will never hear any great leader say that. So by definition, leaders don't wait for other people to start. They just start and they inspire other people. So the cycle that happens for a lot of relationships again is that their partner goes down. They then interpret their partner going down and giving up as a bad thing. They feel bad things, they do bad things, and they go down along with them. And nobody in this ship is really trying to rescue each other. Both of you guys are followers, and both of you are going to sink down together. But if you start to adopt the leader mindset, what happens is you look at your partner feeling resentful, not wanting to try in the relationship, and you, with your leader paradigm, will interpret that as an opportunity to say, oh, if my partner's not willing to try, well, that is my opportunity to shine. That is what I should do as a leader, is to start the healing process anyway. So with that interpretation, and you start to do a lot more positive things, and you start to reverse the cycle. So what happens to a lot of my clients is that even though their partner goes down, they stay up. And they use this thriving state to then eventually slowly pull their partner back up again so that they can start to heal the resentments and make it easy for their partner to want to contribute to the relationship again. And this is really the key mindset that allows my clients to thrive through despite being in a one-sided relationship and actually learn and master and do the things that actually heals that relationship. And to really see this in action, I want you to watch the interview I have with Jason Gerber. And he was a perfect encapsulation of what it means to be a leader. And once he began to lead that relationship, how much safety that restored, how much resentments that actually healed. And before you know it, after 6 months or a year of doing this, his partner really began to reciprocate well in the relationship, to do things that he's never thought his partner was capable of doing, capable of being, etc. So again, if you want to watch the interview, click the link above my head and also down below this video. The second mindset shift that needs to happen is for you to get rid of what we call the hypothetic thinking and get into antithetic thinking. So when you talk about this hypothetic versus antithetic thinking, hypothetic thinking is really when you make an assumption and you don't check whether your assumption is correct or not. You just assume your assumption is correct and you run with that. As we discussed previously, this is what caused the internal resentments to form in the first place. And often these resentments that you form are not based on true things. And so if you're in a position where you're in a one-sided relationship, I don't doubt that your resentments feel real to you. But just because they feel real to you does not mean they're true. So to give you a really great example of this, I recently got married, and about 3 weeks before the wedding, I asked my partner, so what's the exact plan for the days coming into the wedding and during the wedding itself, etc. And I found that she was trying to skirt that question a lot, and she wasn't giving me the true answer, and she was being very wishy-washy about it. And at that point in time, I just made the wrong assumption that she was doing this to be annoying, because she doesn't really care about, my schedule and what I wanted in the wedding, etc. And I ran with this assumption for the next 3 weeks. And I felt a lot of resentments, and I felt like everything was a bit one-sided right now. I'm the one who's paying for the wedding, who's planning for a lot of the wedding, but then my partner wouldn't give me the exact details of what was happening during the day of, the days before, with our family, etc. And during that time, those resentments feel real to me. Whatever assumptions I made, they felt real to me. But after the wedding, I realized that the reason why she couldn't tell me was because she had a lot of surprises planned for me the days coming into the wedding and during the wedding itself. And if she was to tell me all these plans in detail, that would just give away the whole surprise completely. And so here I was for 3 weeks looking at this resentment that I was having, making all these assumptions, these false assumptions, and realizing that there was actually a very good reason why my partner was doing certain actions. And at that point, it felt so right, it felt so true for me to feel resentful, but later on, I felt really silly doing it. So this empathetic mindset is really the only way you can get out of your cycle of resentments and really begin to reframe this whole situation of one-sidedness very differently. So what a lot of my clients find, for example, is that initially they thought that their partner was giving up because they didn't want to try, they didn't care about the relationship, they were unloyal, uncommitted as a people, for example. But really, once they become empathetic and they really ask themselves, what am I missing? How could I be wrong here? They realize that their partner has actually been trying to save their relationship for a very long time. But the moment they give up is really the moment when they've really said to themselves, everything I tried doesn't really make sense anymore. It's not really leading anywhere. And if it's not leading anywhere, the only way I can step is really to leave this relationship. And so what seems like at first like a lack of commitment or a lack of care really becomes your partner has cared too much for too long and it's led nowhere that she gave up. And it's really that right now you may feel it's one-sided, but your partner has been feeling that it's one-sided for a much longer time than you have. And when you learn to see it that way, it suddenly changes this whole spectrum, this whole scenario of you feeling like you're in a one-sided relationship. Because you suddenly feel like you're not the only one feeling it's one-sided anymore. And when my clients finally realize this, they realize that it's really them that's been letting the relationship down in the first place. And so with that different paradigm, they interpret this whole one-sidedness in a very different way. They see it as now it's their turn to shine, their turn to start the work, because their partner has started the work a long time ago. And with that interpretation, that leads to more positive feelings. And that leads to more hopeful and positive actions that eventually leads them to this better outcome that they're looking for. And the number 3 mindset shift, guys, is to choose your heart. It sounds really difficult to try to save your relationship by yourself right now. But again, I always say to my clients, always choose your heart. Because whatever you choose right now, whether you choose to play the leader or the follower, whether you choose to play your hypothetic mind or your empathetic mind, both have pros and cons. And to understand this, we need to understand what we call the rewards versus punishment paradox. So I want you to think about any bad habits that you can have in your life. They reward you right now. They make it easy for you right now, but they make it hard for you in the future. And it's delayed punishment. If you smoke a cigarette, if you eat unhealthy, you will get the instant satisfaction of the nicotine hit. You will get the instant satisfaction of eating that really sinful cheeseburger. But you might not get fat. You might not get a heart attack. You might not get lung cancer till many years or decades later even. But think of any good habits you can think of. They will always punish you now. They'll always make it hard for you right now, but they'll make the future a lot easier for you. So if you eat a salad, if you work out right now, you get the instant punishment of getting exhausted when you work out. But you may not see the positive effects of it until weeks, months, or even years later sometimes. And it's why, if you think about it, you never really say, oh, I accidentally adopted this good habit. But you always will say, I accidentally adopted this bad habit. Because, if given to its own devices, our body and mind will always choose the easier path. And the easier path is always the bad habits though. Now, if you look at playing victim and having the follower mindset versus playing the leader and having the leader mindset, it's the same thing. If you play the follower right now, yes, it makes it easy for you right now. But think about how that follower mindset has led you to where you are today. And it's the follower mindset you've been having for the last months, years, or even decades of your relationship. And look at how hard things are now because you chose to take the easy way out for all those years. But if you choose the leader mindset, yes, it's hard for you now. If you choose the empathetic mindset, yes, it's hard for you now. But that hard that you're taking now will give you a lifetime of bliss later on. And that's exactly what happens to my clients. When they choose the right hard, they really see that, yes, it may be hard for the next 6 months to a year, but really your life is very long. And you have decades to really enjoy the fruits of what it means to be a leader. So really the question here is, which hard do you want to choose? Either path you choose has pros and cons. But one path you choose will lead to a much longer sense of bliss, maybe hard in the short term, but longer sense of bliss. And one hard makes it easy for you now, but leads to a long-term unhappiness. So which hard do you choose? And number 4, only when you have really focused on number 1 to 3, all the internal shifts, do you focus on the actions part. So basically, if you go back to this diagram again, once you change your paradigms, once you make the core paradigm shifts, then do you focus on changing the actions. But when you change your actions here, when you can make those paradigm shifts, and when you try to change the actions here, your actions will seem a lot more effortless, will seem a lot more genuine, it will seem a lot more natural to you, and you can feel like you can sustain the right actions for much longer this time. And of course, the right actions eventually lead to better outcomes. And number 5 is that whatever paradigm shifts you're making and whatever changes to your actions you're making, you need to make sure that you become a performer at it. And the definition of what a performer is someone who not only can do the right things sometimes, but they can not do the wrong things anymore. The distance between the two, between getting it right and mastering something until you cannot get it wrong, is a very vast distance. And it takes my clients 6 to 12 months to really get to the point where they go to become a performer. When we look back at how safety was destroyed in the first place, at how the resentments form in our heads that lead to the negative 6-stage cycle that we talked about, it's really a death by 1,000 cuts. It happens during moments when we're sleepy, when we're not fully operating at 100%. And if you haven't been a performer yet, yes, sometimes you can do some things correctly and respond in the correct ways, but you will also accidentally respond in the wrong ways quite a lot. And those accidental hypothetical thinking, for example, will lead to more resentments forming that creates, again, the 6-stage cycle. And so if you want to get out of your situation right now and thrive through your one-sided relationship, at the very least, you have to make your empathetic mindset and your leader mindset into a lowest default for yourself. Now, one more note is that all these skills, these key paradigm shifts that I showed you in this video, is something that you will need to learn anyway. Because again, if you look at how your relationship degraded, the victim mindset, the follower mindset, and the hypothetical mindset was what caused it in the first place. And right now, if you're trying to save your relationship by using the same victim mindset, the same hypothetical mindset, the same follower mindset, you're not gonna be able to do it. You're gonna be feeling so stuck. But if you look at you feeling stuck right now and you say to yourself, you know what, let me just screw this current partner, let me just find another person, for example, and you give yourself excuses for why you don't want to get out of these 3 mindsets, then realize that when you start a new relationship, you're going to most likely start the same cycle all over again. Sure, you might have the honeymoon period at first, but eventually with the same victim mindset, hypothetical mindset, you're gonna drive that relationship down again. No matter how you cut it, guys. This is a skill you have to learn now or later in order for you to eventually find that blissful relationship that you've been looking for. And I'm not saying that these key paradigm shifts are all the changes you need to reconcile in your relationship, but these are the necessary changes that are required to even for you to learn and do the more advanced strategies that we talk about, like untethering, for example, like building a bulletproof vest, like learning and mastering the frameworks of how you conduct conversations. Because without this, if you adopt the follower mindset, if you adopt the hypothetical mindset, you'll be drowning in so much resentment and so much negative thinking that you're not even going to have the motivation to learn the more advanced strategies of what it takes to save your relationship. And if you do all these things again, if you change your paradigms to something more positive, and you can interpret you being one-sided in a one-sided relationship in a more positive way, and if you can act in a more positive way despite the fact that you're in a one-sided relationship, you're going to get much different outcomes, because the way you show up in a relationship is going to make it so much easier for your partner to not have more resentments build up, but actually start to heal those resentments. When she starts to heal those resentments, she'll make it easier for you to continue doing the right things. And that will make it easier for her, and vice versa. We now start a very different, a much more positive cycle. And that's, again, exactly how my clients do it. So if you want to understand a program that gives you all the things you need to get out of your one-sided relationship from the core internal shifts all the way to Z, to determining what actions you need to change and what tactics and strategies you need to have once you make those internal shifts, join me in my masterclass on the 5 proven steps to rebuilding your relationship from the ground up. In that masterclass, I'll show you the exact steps all my clients have used to get them from your situation to where they are today. So if you want to join me in that masterclass, or if you want to submit your application for the Relationships Revival Program, click the link above my head or also down below this video as well. For now, guys, I'll see you in the next video.